We're now going to wrap up the Pew Research and the Wealth Gap. This is part 6. This will be a little bit longer. I want to highlight a few points, very interesting data points. So I got in touch with Pew and couldn't determine who was it that I got in touch with. They didn't attach their name. However, they pointed out that they did not actually look at age. So they did not look at the median age of the head of household or both household members of the upper income group versus the middle income group. They didn't look at that factor. It's a big factor to look at. There's other factors too, but it's a big factor to look at. They also highlighted that, of course, they extracted their data really fundamentally from this data set here, which is the survey of consumer finance. So, I mean, if you want to look at the data, you can. I've looked at this data set, imported it from Excel. It's really fascinating. And we'll look at figures in a second about this. That's why this video is going to be a little bit longer. As you remember in part 5, we discussed that to get to this 639,400, which is the upper income wealth figure, that if you had more years of age, it actually becomes easier to attain. And we can even see this because in part 1, if you remember, one of the things that we discussed was people who are generally older, not generally, people who are older have more wealth than people who are younger. If you'll look at this. This is $10,000 is the median wealth figure for people less than 35 years of age. Look at the median wealth figure for people from 65 to 74. It's $232,000 plus over that, right? So people who are older have more wealth than people who are younger, right? I mean, it kind of is obvious. And if we look at hitting this figure here, look at the impact of working more years, and this assumes no financial growth. So these figures here aren't earning 5% a year. They're just stagnant, right? Well, look at what happens if you work 40 years. You only have to save $15,985 a year. And of course, if you really push yourself, let's say to $20,000 and you work 40 years, you will have accumulated even more than this figure, again, assuming no financial growth, which is kind of absurd. Well, since Pew didn't look at age, we can look at age and we can see that older individuals have 22 times the wealth of younger individuals. Well, that's way more than 6.6 times, right? Wow. If we look at under 35, they're poor compared to 65 to 74. What about couples with or without kids? Well, couples without kids have 2.2 times the wealth as couples with kids. Where are people writing about that one, right? What about education? College-educated individuals had 12.7 times the wealth as individuals who didn't finish high school. By the way, let's look at this data set, because one of the things that Pew said was it was getting worse. Always love to complain, but they're not really looking at their data set. So let's look at less than 35 years of age. Back in 1989, the median household net worth for people who are less than 35 was $14,700, and look at what it is now, $10,046. I'm sorry, $10,460, right? $10,460, I mean. That's a decline. Look at it the next year, $15,000. $18,000, it was increasing. Oh, now it decreased, $13,000. $15,000, these are the median figures. $15,000, $17,000. This is, by the way, how you look at data, right? This is what Pew is not doing. So that's interesting. Now let's look at 65 to 74, $140,270. Look at it now, $232,100. So for the older individuals, wealth has increased. And if I look at 160, 168, 209, 233, 234, 268, of course this is right before the bust. Now all of a sudden you have post-bust 221, makes sense. Stock market declined. So it's gone up for older individuals, but it hasn't gone up for younger. Now, here's the dirty little secret that some people don't realize. Part of this explanation for this group is marriage. People are getting married much later. They weren't getting married much later in 1989. That's the impact. This, more than likely, is factoring dual income, right? This, you have more young people who are not married anymore. You've had a drop. And I predicted, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago, I predicted that marriage rates are going to significantly decline. And we're now below a 50% marriage rate in the U.S. That's huge. That's huge. And that's going to have an impact on wealth. People who are married, generally speaking, what I found at the bank, make more money than people who are not. Generally. It's not always true, but people who are married generally do. Marriage, whatever reason, and I don't understand why, so I'm not answering the why question, but marriage does increase wealth. I don't have any idea why that does that. Okay, let's look at, I'm going to skip the kids, but let's look at the college education, right? Versus no high school diploma. So we know that the median, and I know it's way up here, so it's every other one is how. So the median starts, let me just confirm, I believe that's what it is. Median starts, right? So median in 1989, $710 was a median household wealth, net worth, in 1989 for someone who did not have a high school diploma. Look at what it is now. It's $17,000. You talk about a significant drop. Now, why didn't Pew highlight this? This is much worse. People back in 1989 who didn't have a high school diploma did much better than people now who don't have a high school diploma. Man, education has become a huge factor in the last 30 years, right? Boy, I mean, why didn't Pew highlight this? Where is the media linking this video saying, look at what happened in education, right? 43, 30, there's a huge drop. 34, increase. 30, 33, 25, big drop here. Then you go back to 37. Now look at what happens, by the way, from here to here. 37,160 to 17. Either they really changed their survey methods, or something big happened. And what is that? That is 2007. There's a stock market collapse right there. Very interesting. Significant drop. What about college degree? Okay, 1989 median wealth for someone with a college degree. I should say, median family net worth. Okay. College, $204,260. By the way, notice it dropped here. That was a pretty significant drop. It continued to drop here. Then it increased. Must have had some recessions. Then it really increased. 281. Then we had 279, 319, 200 and whoa! Look at that drop right there. Scroll back up. That again, stock market collapse. Same thing here is going on. And now we're at 218. Well, you'll notice that again. I could say this. I'd sit there and say, well, in the last 30-ish years, not quite, but in the last 30-ish years, college-educated workers have increased their wealth since 1989 versus high schoolers have seen a significant decrease. This is much more of a crisis, in my opinion, than what Pew's highlighting in terms of the upper income wealth versus middle income wealth. Again, what's the college-educated of the upper income versus the middle income, and what's the age? That could be factors, but what about this? That's it. People, this is a huge, huge drop-off, right? Now, you went from 43 in 1989 to 17. So, there are a lot of other factors you can look at in these data. Why didn't they highlight these? And as you can see, I mean, if you want to create a crisis, we can really create a crisis. We can sit there and say, man, you know, we need a better world for people who decide to drop out of high school. There are going to be people who drop out of high school. That's just going to be a reality of it, and we need to make sure that we're not leaving them behind. It's not about wealth inequality or saying upper income or middle income. That's not wealth inequality there. That's a group of people who are being left behind, right? So what factor are we looking at? As you can see, there are other factors that are way more important. We saw that, for instance, younger individuals have gotten poorer over the last 30 years. People who are under 35 do not have the wealth that they used to have, right? Whereas the older individuals have not. Interesting. Right? There are other factors we can look at. My point here is that if we're just trying to generate page views, which is what most media are doing, again, they're not intentionally lying. They're either ignorant, they don't understand the numbers, or they're trying to generate page views, right? But if we're not trying to generate page views, we can look and say, man, there's some other major factors here at play, and highlight those factors. Pretty fascinating stuff. I welcome you to look at the data, but no, the rich are not getting richer and the poor are not getting poorer. This is yet another lie by the media that you are, or ignorance could be that too, that you are being told. There are a lot of factors at play here, and we can see by looking through the data what's important and what we can highlight and look at solutions instead of just talking about problems with no solutions.